shows how language has become more exclusive in the Christian tradition. And that's by looking very briefly at the example of the Holy Spirit. It shows us quite neatly how language works, and it also helps us see the movement in terms of the language of the Gospels, the language of the Bible, to the language of the Church, which is less inclusive. As you will all know, the Hebrew word that's used to describe the Spirit in Genesis at creation is ruach, which is feminine in form and usage. We're not suggesting that the Spirit is actually feminine, as much as not saying that God is actually a male father. But throughout the Hebrew Scriptures, the Spirit, the breath of God, was in a feminine form, ruach. It allowed for a much more nuanced description of the activity of God. It lessened the risk of that ossification, as I was talking about before, making statues of particular images of God, even in our language. It lessened that risk by having a much more flexible and malleable way of describing the activity of God, God breathing, ruach, over the waters. Aramaic is closely related to Hebrew, as you'll know, and so Jesus' everyday language referred to spirit in this way, in a feminine form. So we have that tradition of using feminine language about the Spirit. Moving to the New Testament, Greek is used. The word for spirit is pneuma, which is neuter. It's used 375 times in the New Testament. And if you want to read more about this, you could read Alwyn Marriage's book, Life-Giving Spirit, where this is very clearly set out. So we've moved from ruach in the Hebrew Scriptures to pneuma in the New Testament. And the word pneuma covers a range of ideas, divine guidance, for example, the presence of God in a community, the promptings of personal conscience. Although the main word used to describe the Spirit is this word pneuma, St. John introduces another word, which is better for one with whom we might be in relationship, parakletos, comforter, and we're familiar with that description of the Spirit too. That word, parakletos, is itself masculine, although in English it's often translated as comforter, as I said, which is a neutral word. Ruach, pneuma. When the New Testament was translated into Latin, the word chosen was spiritus, a masculine word, to bear the meaning of pneuma and ruach. In this masculine form, then, from spiritus, translated into English, the Spirit became referred to as he, and was a reinforcing metaphor for the intrinsic maleness of God. Our concept of God, in that very neat illustration between Hebrew Scriptures, New Testament, and the language of the Church, the way in which we describe the Spirit simply changed gender from she to it to he. And our concept of God in Trinity lost the wholeness it might have had. As I said, it became a reinforcing metaphor for the maleness of God. Had we remained a religion that spoke in Aramaic or Hebrew, we may have had a more whole attitude towards the language that we use for God. It is therefore appropriate, as a way of learning that language is not immutable, to call the Holy Spirit she.